Welcome to Guerrilla Discipleship. My name's Kevin Baker. It is such a joy to be your host and to talk to you again about what's going on as we make disciples, what we're learning, and how we can learn together. I'm so glad that you're a part of this podcast, and I hope that you will continue to be sharing what we're learning together, because no matter how much we learn, if we're not practicing, if we're not actually obeying, then the kingdom of God will continue to be sidelined in our lives and in the lives of those around us. Now, I want to talk to you today about what I think is one of the greatest obstacles to disciple making in our churches and in our lives. It may be a surprising issue for you, but maybe not. When we talk about this, maybe you'll go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, just think about it. What do you think the number one hindrance to disciple making is? Do you think it's the secularization in our culture? Do you think that we don't have the skills necessary or the knowledge that we need? Is it that we've never been discipled or trained, or what maybe comes to your mind? I'm going to tell you the number one thing I believe that is a hindrance and keeps most of us from being effective as disciple makers. It's a simple four-letter word called fear. We're afraid. We're afraid to begin to start spiritual conversations or to even become spiritually obvious. We're afraid we'll be obnoxious. We're so afraid we're going to be obnoxious. We're afraid to be obvious. We keep waiting for doors to open, and even when they open, we often don't take advantage of them because we were such in a retreat, such in a defensive posture that we weren't ready for the door that God opened for us to have a conversation. If I can tell you what I've run into more than anything else in my own heart and in the people that I've had exposure to, when we talk about being a disciple maker, it's fear. It's we're afraid that we aren't smart enough yet, ready enough yet, knowledgeable enough yet, gifted enough yet. It's afraid of the rejection that we might get. It's afraid that we won't do it right. It's a fear that we might lead people in the wrong direction. It's a fear that we might get in over our heads. We are just a people swimming in fear. You know, the Bible has so much to say about fear. I think God knew that we were going to be a fearful people. I think God understands the frailties of our human nature, and I think he understands that we are often living in anxiety and fear. That's why over and over and over again in the Bible, God says, do not be afraid. We encounter God. We dream and long for encounters with God. And when God shows up, what do? We cower and we say, God, I can't tolerate even being in your presence. You're too holy, too powerful, too frightening. And God comes back. Even the angels that came and represented him comes back, and their first words are often, do not fear. In the New Testament, the epistles remind us that we were not given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of love and power, a spirit of the ability to trust that God has us and will use us. So think about your own life. What is it that you're really afraid of when it comes to becoming a disciple maker? Just committing to saying, God, I'm going to become today committed to the task of being a disciple maker for you. I'm going to tell others. I'm going to share. I'm going to be a witness. I'm going to let my story be told. I will no longer cower or be silent when I have opportunities to speak. In fact, God, I'm going to look for opportunities to be starting conversations around spiritual topics in an organic way, not in an obnoxious way. What is it that rises up in us? What is it that rises up in you? Because whatever it is, whatever you're afraid of, God has an answer for that. God has shown us that the work of disciple making is so much on his shoulders. I believe that's why Jesus said to us that his yoke is easy, his burden is light. It's that God's going to do all the heavy lifting in disciple making. First of all, we know that unless the Spirit of God is drawing someone, we can't persuade them. So we don't have to be persuasive people. We don't have to be well articulated, argumentative, or what. It's if the Spirit of God is at work in someone's life, then all we have to do is be willing to help God to be useful for God by being open and willing to share what we know out of our lives and out of our experiences with God. So we don't have to be the most persuasive or the most gifted evangelist. God doesn't, there's a difference between being called and gifted to be an evangelist and called and gifted to be a witness. Every single one of us as followers of Jesus is called and commanded to be a witness to what we've experienced with God. Not all of us are called and gifted to be evangelists. And so we've got to distinguish between what it means to be a witness and what it means to be an evangelist. An evangelist does have a special anointing of God to begin to open the minds and hearts of people by the power of God's Spirit, that they might be drawn in to a place where they would commit or begin to walk with Jesus. But witness is simply a one who lives boldly, openly about what God is doing in their lives, one who speaks it freely. We're not monitoring our language. We have gotten so used to monitoring our language where we won't use the word praying or blessed, or we don't talk about what's going on in our life with God because we reserve that for places that are safe. Our Christian conversations with Christian brothers and sisters. That's no way to be a witness. That's what Jesus was fighting against when he said, you don't put a light under a bushel basket. And a city on a hill illuminates and draws people to it. God's inviting us to be cities on a hill individually in our families. Is it easy? It's not easy. Will you sometimes take heat for that? Will people get on you for that? Yeah, of course. I mean, can we just expect that? In this world that we live in, it's pretty much impossible to have any opinion that at some point somebody's not going to get all over your back about or be in opposition to you. So all we can do then is just stay silent unless we happen to be in a place where we believe we're a part of the majority. Minority voices are important voices. And so we may be right now in the culture, in our communities, in our workplaces, in our families even, we may be minority voices when it comes to spiritual matters. That's okay. Our voice is important. We don't have to be aggressive or obnoxious. We can be just a voice of truth, a voice of reality, a voice of witness, and a life of witness. So that as we live this life of witness, we then begin to allow God to draw attention to us. It's almost like God takes us as a flashlight in his hand for this dark world in which we live, and he shines our light around those who are near us so that we might then illuminate what God is wanting them to see. And by doing that, I believe one of the things that we need to do is to just be ourselves. We need to get over the fear that we have to somehow be perfect in our understanding or our theology, or even perfect in our behavior and practice. I've been following Jesus actively daily as a committed follower of Jesus for over 40 years. I still don't have everything right. I make mistakes. I sin. I stumble. I fall. Okay. I am going on to perfection. I am asking God to continue to sanctify my life. But just because someone sees me in practice and sees me in process, well, that may be the biggest attraction for them to go, oh my goodness, I just am blessed by the way that you are able to fail or fall or stumble, and by the grace of God, know how loved you are. The world needs to see that. In this cancel culture that is growing around us, we need to show that our God is not a canceling God. He's not a condemnation God. Our God is a forgiving God. Our God is a God of reconciliation and hope. There's nothing ever hopeless about our lives. regardless of how big our mistakes are. And we need to show that. But if we're going to show the hope of God, that means that we have to be willing at times to show sometimes the hopelessness of our own circumstances. Sometimes we've got to talk about our failures in order to show God's glory and grace. Paul was not afraid of highlighting how miserable he had been in terms of his life prior to Christ. He didn't have any problem talking about how he was the chief of sinners, and he talked about his own persecution of the church as a witness to the power and redeeming love of God in his life. Let's be willing not to show off our sin. I'm not asking for that. But let's not so hide our failings and our humanness that people don't get the reality of what it's like to live with a powerful, loving, redemptive God. Let's be willing to own our mistakes. Let's be willing to acknowledge, oh man, I really messed that up. Because we may be some of the most humble people, but the most willing to humble ourselves, let me say it that way, that others in the world might ever see. And can I tell you, that will be attractive to a God. And God will exalt us. If we humble ourselves, God says he'll make sure that we are honored and exalted. Let's stop honoring ourselves. Let's stop hiding. I think one of the number one things that we could do as followers of Jesus, now this is going to get right into that fear issue, but if you want to be a disciple maker, commit to stop hiding. Someone said not long ago that freedom in Christ is no longer having to hide. We don't have to hide. We don't have to boast in our failures, but we don't have to hide them either. We can say, oh, I'm still struggling with this. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how God is helping me. And boy, I know you could see me today, but you should have seen me 3 years ago. I was more angry then than I am today. I'm still a work in progress. But by not hiding, we actually allow God to amplify our lives into the world in a way that people can see the hope that we have and the progress that we have begun to experience as the power of God's grace takes hold in our lives. You and I are going to have to wrestle through the biggest enemy of disciple making, which is fear. And how will we ever, are we waiting? What's our answer on that fear? Are we waiting for God to make it easier? There's always going to be fear. Until I try something, until I move in. And by the way, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving through my fears. And so what we will never be lost on fears until we find the courage to move into what we're already afraid of. Because there'll always be another fear that comes. But here's what happens as we courageously step into what we're fearing now in obedience to God. We see the power of God and the faithfulness of God, which gives us courage for the next thing that comes up. There's no way to get out of the trap of fear until we just walk into it. There'll always be fear. And so you and I need to come back to, I think, over and over again, that the God of the scriptures, the God of the universe has revealed himself over and over and over again, saying to us, do not be afraid, do not be afraid. What are you afraid of right now? Could you walk into it in some way with the power and the presence of God and watch what God will do? Even if this isn't a disciple-making adventure, maybe you're living in fear about, I don't know, something that has nothing to do with being directly to do it with being a disciple maker, but God's got something there that you're afraid of, and he's inviting you, step into it and watch what I will do. And that may be just the key to empowering you and igniting a passion in you to see that our God is bigger than anything that we're afraid of, anything that we can fear in this life. God is bigger than our fears. God is bigger than our anxieties. Let's take and make a commitment today to not be ruled by fear. It's okay to be fearful. It's not okay to be controlled by fear. Let me say that again. It's okay to be fearful. It's not okay to be controlled by fear. So let's decide to be controlled by God, even with our fears. and watch how God uses us to make disciples who make disciples. Let's watch how, as we don't any longer allow fear to control us, but to allow God to control us, that abundance in living opens up before us. Healing comes toward us and in us because of this commitment that we're going to make today. Thanks so much for being a part of Disciple Making and Guerrilla Discipleship. If you want more resources, let us know. You can email me at kbaker@oakdale.church. If you have questions, resources that you need, visit our website, oakdale.church. And we are here to continue to help raise up an army of followers of Jesus who will, by the power of his Spirit, make an impact in this world. God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of Guerrilla Disciple Making.